Hey YouTube, what's going on, y'all? It is a Black Opinion again with another video, and today I actually wanted to talk about a few different things to all of my fellow Americans out there. And I think I've been, excuse me, I've been thinking about this video for the longest time, right? Like, I've been pondering if I even want to make it or if it would even matter because, I would think to myself, oh, that many people won't see it, or like, I could put myself in potential jeopardy because, it's America. But, I feel like I'm at a point where, like, excuse me, I feel I'm at a point in which I can't really sit by any longer and act like nothing's going on or, whatever. I say that silence is compliance, you know what I mean? And every single one of our voices is very important as American citizens. And with that, I come to you today with a few topics I just wanted to sit down and discuss. And before we even start, I want to make it very clear that, like, I'm no expert. I'm no I'm no man in a suit and tie. You know what I mean? I'm just a black man giving his opinion on the internet. So, don't take what I say as gospel. If it resonates with you negatively or, upsets you in a way, I'm just glad I made you feel some type of way. So, there's that. But now that little mini disclaimer is out of the way, let's get to what I wanted to discuss. The first thing I wanted to ask all my Americans is, number one, how are you holding up? Like, truthfully, how are you holding up? Are you like, I'm just kind of day by day just cruising by, or, oh, you're black pill, you're like, nothing's going right, we're all doomed, we're all gonna die, and all this other, nonsense? Or are you more like, yeah, I'm getting by, so that's the first question I want to ask. Genuinely, how are you doing? Leave a comment, and I'll do my best to respond to any and all. Excuse me, but just, we need to check in on each other. That's one big thing that America doesn't have, or at least doesn't have as much as we used to as community. We need to be checking in on each other and asking each other a bunch of things like, hey, how are you doing? How's life? How's, blank, blank, blank. And not small talk, but genuinely asking, like, hey, like, how's life treating you, man? Like, how are you feeling about blank, blank, blank? So that was the first thing I just wanted to get out of the way. But the first big topic I wanted to talk about is, it's the state of America. You know what I mean? I'm just going hot and heavy in there with it. I honestly wanted to discuss this with all of you. And I think one thing we as Americans need to do is, number one, take a deep breath, all right? Take a deep breath, because you can see I'm outside my apartment I just paid rent for, recording this video, and, I'm fine, I'm okay. Now, obviously, that's just me. There are tons of people in America that aren't fine, but we have to take our victories, our small victories, as much as we can, all right? Just having some peaceful time to get some good sleep, or having a good meal, like, those are small victories that we take for granted. And that's one thing I think we should definitely be more proud of ourselves for, just making it day by day, right? Because it's been a lot for us Americans, I feel like, no matter where you lean on the political spectrum. And you'll notice I'm going to talk about that. But when it comes down to it, we are more than our political ideologies, right? Like, whether you're left-leaning or liberal, which, if it does matter, which you should know my bias, I am more on the left-leaning side of the spectrum, or you're more right-leaning or conservative, I think it doesn't really matter as much as we make it matter in America. And that's one of the biggest things I think a lot of us really need to understand. Now, it only really matters when you're going super far on either side of the spectrum. When you're far left, you're far right, and those words kind of make me cringe because of our Führer in chief, if you catch my drift. But it's only really when you go super far in either direction, I would say, is when it's like cause for concern. Aside from that, again, if you're left or right, there's really no it's not that big of a deal, all right? It's just how you view, I guess, the world and the politics, like the way your things like for example, I'm a huge advocate for basic things like universal health care. You shouldn't be terrified to call a ambulance in the country you live in a first world country that's supposedly the best in the world. I think that's ludicrous. Some people would sit here and call me a communist because I said something like that. It is what it is, you know what I mean? I also think that workers, all of us, deserve to make more money. I only make $17.50 an hour, and I'm it's like the most I've made, but it's still not going very, very far. But it's definitely helping. And I think I worked a lot of jobs since I've been 16, and I'm 22, and excuse me, getting a little ahead of myself here, but I've worked a lot of jobs, and I've worked from Walmart to McDonald's, Trader Joe's. I love Trader Joe's, but I've worked a lot of places, all right? And I can tell you for a fact, I don't care where you work, whether you're flipping burgers or you're counting things on a keyboard or whatever. At the end of the day, you deserve a livable wage. And that's that. There's no real debate about that. There's no reason a company that makes millions or billions of dollars, or any company at all really, can't afford to pay you a livable wage. And you may say, what about small businesses? And I say, again, smaller businesses, they're getting off the ground and they're gonna get their employees up and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, if your business requires humans' time, then you need to pay them adequately for that time. This is time that you're never getting back. But that was just a small tangent in what I was actually, my own ideologies, just to give you an example of where I lean. Because I think you should definitely, excuse me, know my bias when it comes to this whole nonsense here, the whole political spectrum. But getting back on track to what we were talking about. So, left or right isn't really a thing that matters that much. Unfortunately, to some people, it matters so much that it's a part of your identity whether you like it or not. It's like, oh, you're a Democrat, so I gotta stay far away from you, or oh, you're a Republican, I hate you. And it's like, buddy, we're both Americans. We just have a different way of seeing things. And you can be a Democratic-leaning person or a left-leaning person and like some Republican stuff, and the vice versa. So I really just want all of us to remember that you are more than your political ideology. Now, with that being said, again, when you go very extreme in either side, it's never really a good thing. And that's something I think we all really need to start thinking about and remembering, is the fact that we are more than political ideology. We're human beings, we change our minds. Some things work for other nations, some things don't work as much with our nation or whatever, etc., etc. And with the whole stuff, one of the biggest things that I was really concerned about was the political violence that's been going on in America, if I'm being quite honest here. As we all know in America, Charlie Kirk was assassinated by Tyler Robinson. I believe he was a student at the University of Utah, but essentially it was a white 22-year-old male, Tyler Robinson, with Republican parents, and he assassinated Charlie Kirk. And if I recall correctly, the motive was essentially he was just tired of how hateful Charlie Kirk was. I could be misinterpreting that last part, but everything else, like I said, I'm pretty confident on from all the research I've done. And, I still remember when I saw that, I personally, and I'm saying this as a black man, I know that dude was not exactly the best person. And if we're being completely honest, he was a very prejudiced piece of shit. Now, just because he was a prejudiced piece of shit does not mean he deserved to get no-scoped on the front stage. I will, like Barack Obama said, I don't agree with him. He definitely was a very terrible guy. He had some very wicked, terrible prejudice ideologies and misconceptions about black people, black women especially, and transgender people, and, the works. However, did he really deserve to get assassinated? I say no, he didn't really deserve that. Now, I personally am not losing tears over it, you know what I mean? I'm more like, I just don't really care in the grand scheme of things, but then again, that could be my desensitized American brain with how much violence goes on. But, the reason I bring up his death is because of the fact that, when he was assassinated, and we were all, learning, we didn't have any details about it. People were already, particularly we're just going to be transparent, we can be adults here, MAGA, right? I think there's a difference between being Republican and being a MAGA, personally, right? But a lot of, very far right-leaning people were assuming that this was some leftist nut job or whatever the hell, some radical left lunatic, as the Fuhrer likes to say. And they were like, oh, we need to get back at the left and we need to start a civil war and blah, 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 blah. And then we found out the details that the shooter was a 22-year-old white dude with Republican parents. And then all of a sudden, we decided to go from war to thoughts and prayers, which I personally found very disgusting, because to me, as a minority, as a black man, that just pretty much showed me, and I'm not new to this, like I said, I've been here 22 years, this isn't something that I'm new to, but to me, that showed me you're not looking for what's actually happening. You're looking for an excuse to justify your prejudice. You're looking for a reason. You're not looking for what actually happened. You're looking for a reason. And to me, that's very dangerous. And the fact that the Fuhrer, Mr. President Donald J. Trump here, is stoking the flames of that is dangerous. And it's very, very stupid. Number one, no president, no matter how bad or good you perceive them to be, should ever be inciting violence to anyone in his country. The president's job, one of them anyway, is to keep the country together, to spread the country and make it this left versus right divide is a bigger grand scheme of things to, in this case, in one particular scenario, to be starting a civil war. In another particular scenario, it could be to just, make it easier to distract his right-leaning fan base from the left-leaning one, instead of making, or so that way people, Americans, can't realize that this isn't left-right, it's up versus down, because there's really only two classes in American society. There's the working class, and there's the owner class. Now, for those of you who don't know, working class is just working class citizens. That's me, you, the guy who made your burger that you probably cursed out because you were having a bad day, the gas station employee, ex-gas station employee, but the gas station employee, etc., etc., etc. The people that you basically see every day when you're walking the streets of New York or going down to Boston to get your Dunkin' Donuts. Now, excuse the baby crying in the background, but yeah, so those are working class people. People like you and me that, go to work, get our paycheck, and we just keep on pushing in life. The owner class are the folks like, the owning class. Everyone else, the elites, you may call them. Bezos, Trump, Elon, Zuckerberg, they're the ruling class. And if you have to ask yourself, what class am I a part of? You're a working class citizen, buddy. Ruling class people do not have to ask themselves that. And that's not me, giving them a good old wank, if you catch my drift. That's being serious. If you are a working class citizen, if you were an owning class citizen, I guess. I don't know if I can really call them that, but if you're an owning class citizen, you're going to know that. If you have to ask yourself where you lean, then you're a part of us. And I think that's something that America, for some reason, doesn't want you to know. And when I say America, I just mean like the country as a whole, or at the very least, we have forgotten that. Remember, in the 2008 financial crisis, or even the Great Depression, very rarely do these governments actually help you very much or have your back. In 2008, I believe, if I recall correctly, I was still younger then, from the research I've done, long short, the working class boys and girls got left to rot while the banks got bailed out. And that was kind of the first time where people started to kind of have some class consciousness and kind of turn the cogs in their head, right? And, I think that alone is perfect proof. And, some people will sit here and say, like, oh, well, if we let the banks fail, then it would have international waves and blah, 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 blah. And we can talk about that at a different time. However, the fact still stands that the country, the United States, kind of just left its people to rot and figure it out after, them being victims in this scheme of capitalism here. And that's one thing I really wanted to drive with this video, especially, is the fact that, we as citizens, United States citizens, especially working class ones, need to stop putting so much emphasis on left and right. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter as much as we think it does. And in reality, we all should be working together in unison. That doesn't mean we have to agree on every single thing. That doesn't mean we have to like each other. But we should all be able to at least respect each other no matter what their orientations are. And be able to say, yeah, like, this working class guy is just like me. He's just trying to go to work and get a paycheck and keep it pushing. And I feel like when we start embracing that fact, where it's not really a matter of politics, but a matter of positions on the scale in this like whole capitalist game of ours, we will definitely come much farther in just that short amount of time. Like, once a lot of people realize that and start to understand the difference between a working class citizen and an owning class citizen, then you'll start to unravel a lot more things. And I mean, we can go down that rabbit hole, but I don't want to keep going down that in this particular video. Going back to the topic that we were talking about with Mr. Kirk's assassination, the reason I brought him up especially is because I don't think people generally realize how biased the news is and how biased America is, especially towards Caucasian people. And that's not me saying, oh, white people suck or anything like that. Like, no. But that same day, or at the very least very close to that event with Charlie Kirk, a school, I don't know if I see that on YouTube, and I'm kind of trying to do this in one take. So a school happened, and, it was another white guy. And it didn't really get talked about. And then I think earlier this week, there was something with another white guy who was like 29, who apparently, if I have the details correct here, were, firing off at like something with ICE agents or detainees, which apparently they're spinning it as it was agents that got harmed, but apparently from what I'm hearing, like, and researching, there were no agents and it was detainees. And Kash Patel, the director of the FBI, took a picture and posted it on Twitter 5 minutes after the whole event happened of like anti-ICE on the bullets with blue marker, because liberals obviously prefer the color blue over anything else. And apparently that was enough evidence to prove that the shooter was left-leaning. I personally think that whether you're left or right-leaning, it doesn't really matter, because if you're inciting violence, like with Charlie Kirk or with this ICE stuff or, whatever, you probably shouldn't be doing that, regardless of your political ideology. But if you are doing that, I mean, you're kind of a threat, regardless, whether you're left, right, or you lean somewhere in the middle or wherever the fuck. I feel like that's dangerous regardless. And I've noticed in America, especially with, the Führer in chief and his buddies like Cash Patel and Stephen Miller and the rest of them, they're trying to spin these narratives against left-leaning people, the liberals, the left, the radical left, the radical left, the radical left, or whatever, that fucking. And part of me really is concerned about that because that's very dangerous to do. And part of me is very disappointed in the right-leaning side of America, I guess you could say. Because, guys, I want to be completely honest with you guys. Like, I'm telling you this as someone that is blue, I guess you could say. Them boys don't give a fuck about you. I promise you. If the country went bankrupt tomorrow, they'd be on a helicopter to Switzerland literally within the hours. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't. Even the baby agrees with me. But seriously, like, they don't care about you. Donald Trump, Stephen Miller, Cash Patel, Pam Bondi, Major Taylor Greene, I believe her name is, that freaking but they do not care about you. And that's not me trying to sit here and say like, oh, well, obviously the Democratic ones really, really care. Listen, at the end of the day, I can't sit here and put every single politician in the same basket. But at least for most things, But what I can definitely say is, on average, a politician doesn't give a fuck about you. They're never really going to see you. You're not even going to know you really exist. You can write your congressman, and like, I'm not saying that's useless, but in the grand scheme of things, when things get tough, we only have ourselves to really lean on. Like, think about it. When the 2008 financial crash happened, did they bail you out? No, they didn't. When COVID happened, did your ruling class elites really help you? No, they didn't. It's always been up to us. So I have to ask you guys on the far-leaning side of the right, I guess you could say, the MAGA folks apparently, why are you still supporting this man? This man is making all of our lives worse, especially yours. And I can't, like, I'm kind of bridging to the next point here, but I can't see why you would support that. Like, you're telling me you would rather support a man, who doesn't agree with free speech when it's against him. A man who is in the files, the Epstein files, we all know. Like, come on guys, like, it's not, he's in there some way, somehow. We're not even gonna waste time even trying to debate that. A man who literally is a multi-time felon when you can't even get a job as like a Walmart employee or whatever in the United States as a felon. Like, there's literally a box that's like, are you a felon? And we elected one. So much for that, I guess. I could just keep going down the list. Like the January 6th insurrection, the whole "we must act now for our political enemies" thing that he said like a couple shits ago, and then the whole everything is a joke when I say it unless you guys like it, so then it's not a joke, because if you pay attention, anytime any one of him or his buddies say something that the American public and especially the right don't agree with, all of a sudden it was just a joke, guys. Like to all those right-wing people, I want to tell you, they think you are very fucking stupid, and that's putting it mildly. And I'm not saying that you are. I'm saying those fools in Washington think you are fucking stupid. Like, is this really who you want to support? And listen, just because you are Republican doesn't mean you have to support every single Republican-leaning person, and the same for Democrat or whatever your party is. You can disagree with a candidate and still like that party. It doesn't have to be this way or no way. You know what I mean? And that's the big thing I really want to drive home in this video. It's like I just want to challenge the ways of thinking, if possible, for anyone watching this. I want to make you really think. You know what I mean? I want you to just take a second and question some things. Because I personally believe you should always question authority. No matter if they're good or bad as you perceive them. You should be asking yourself questions like, are they helping me and my other fellow countrymen? Are they making things worse for us? Is there are they doing things for political gain? Are they, you know, do I believe in them? The words that they say, do I trust them as a citizen, and etc. etc. Like, authority should always be questioned, and that's not me saying you need to be super radical or dangerous or anything like that. But okay, I didn't know if my phone was going off right there. But you should always question authority. And again, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but you should always question authority. And I feel like a lot of folks just look at whatever's on the news and they just kind of run with it. And obviously, I get it, in a honest, ideal society, the news should give you the full story with no bias, with as little bias, because there's always going to be some, with as little bias as possible, as truthfully and concise and transparent, as truthfully as possible, as concise as possible, and with as much transparency, as possible. But we know that that's not the case, especially with Fox News. And I mean, they literally were just on the air talking about, I think, homeless people, saying, they need to be euthanized or some shit. And I'm like, so Jimmy Kimmel can't make a joke about the Fuhrer, Donald J. Trump, the Fuhrer-in-Chief, not caring about Charlie Kirk's assassination days after it happened. But apparently, we can talk about getting rid of homeless people on public television. Okay. America, we got a lot of work to do, and I'm not going to sit here and act like, and again, if you've studied any sort of history with America, from anything, from the CIA's history to our own American history, anyway, and if we're being honest, it's not just America. I feel like every country definitely has its dark sides, right? Germany, France, pretty much all of Britain, America, wherever. Everywhere has its difficulties. I'm not going to sit here and say it doesn't. But very rarely, I feel like, they're really good guys, quote unquote. I don't believe in good guys or bad guys, really. In this world, I say there's just justified and unjustified, and even then, that barely matters because it's kind of an opinion. And, at the end of the day, humans are really gray. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying all humans are just morally corrupt POSs or anything like that, but to sit here and just be oh yeah, we're good, they're bad, is very dangerous, and we're seeing that right now. And I just really, my whole point with what I'm saying here is that I just really genuinely want everyone on all sides of the spectrum, but especially the very heavy right-leaning spectrum, to really question, is this really the guy that you want to die behind? Right? Because I've seen videos of dudes literally saying oh, we're gonna incite, please Donald J. Trump, please Trump that, incite civil war so we can take it out on the radical left and all this other shit. And I'm like, you want your president to incite a civil war, which they're constitutionally and legally not allowed to do, by the way, but you want your president to incite a civil war against the other half of the political leaning spectrum of your countrymen, so you can have an excuse to take out your hate against people you don't understand with bullets full of prejudice. Are you fucking kidding me? Have we really gotten to such a point? Have we gotten to such a point in history where we are literally repeating Mustache Man's Germany all over again? I guess it depends on which Mustache Man, but the big H one, you know who I'm talking about, not Stalin, the big H one, Again, I'm trying to kind of censor myself a little bit because I really don't want to edit a lot of this video. I kind of just wanted to shoot it and, get it out the way. But, excuse me, let me take a quick sip real quick. I hate this tea. Not sponsored. But hey, if you want to throw me a bag. No, but seriously, back to what I was talking about. So are we really at that low of a point in which the very far right-leaning folks want justification, or literally, like the Charlie Kirk thing proved it, like, are yearning for justification to assault, to cleanse, basically, if we're being honest, as disgusting as that sounds, to cleanse this country and take it back. What in Jesus is wrong with you? Like, what is actually wrong with you, buddy? Like, your prejudice against things that you don't understand is so great that instead of just simply accepting that times do change, technology evolves, people evolve, culture shifts and all that, to just be like, no, I don't want to understand you at all. I'd rather just, How do you sleep with yourself at night? How do you do that? For the record, there's a lot of things I don't understand, especially when it comes to the LGBTQ plus side of things. And even then, I don't see them as lower class human beings. Because A, that's fucked up, and B, that'd be hypocritical because I'm black. Like, I would be no better than the same Caucasian men and women that look at me and my people as less than human beings, not even 50 years ago. And I mean, remember, it never really went away. We just, America just got better at hiding it. And, we're seeing the culmination of all that unfiltered hate just brewing up again into this pot because people are just too scared of a threat that's not there. You guys say radical left, and I really, first off, the White House, Trump's administration literally pulled a study that was about the percentage, or the likelihood of of very far right extremists, I guess you could say, and how they, the statistics of them with political violence. And I don't remember the exact numbers, I'm not going to pretend I do, but they were very far, okay? A lot of political violence is very far right, if we're being honest. But at the end of the day, that doesn't matter, because violence is violence. It doesn't matter if the person committing the violence was Republican or Democratic, Islamic, or undecided. It doesn't matter. It's violence at the end of the day. And I think we all should be condemning that. Even me, who, like I said, I'm not exactly losing sleep over Charlie Kirk. And I still say that he deserved to be... No, he didn't. I'm making light of it, but at the end of the day, I can at least say humanely, he didn't deserve to just get fucking no-scoped on live TV. That's crazy. Anyways, but to kind of wrap this mini topic up that I was talking about, because there's one last thing I want to talk about. We're already 33 minutes in. I just really want all of America, especially the very far-right people, to really look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, what are you scared of? And why are you scared of? Are you scared of gay people because you don't understand them? Are you scared of black people because you think we're all violent, because that's all your Fox News shows of us, is all of the bad things that happen to our communities because of the conditions we find ourselves in, because of conditions that were placed on us by the ruling class, such as redlining, for a great example, which is when, the practice of essentially marking districts in a city or marking districts on the map. And basically, the easiest way I can explain this, redlining is the practice of, you take a district, right? Fucking Pittsburgh, Prince George's County, Maryland, or whatever, right? And they'll mark out, or Chicago, perfect example, Chicago, and mark out places on the map that's color code. And depending on the colors code is essentially the likely, or the, rating, you could say, of if you should invest there or not, right? And this is a real practice. Look, Google it if you don't believe me. Excuse me. Again, I'm kind of fumbling the explanation here, so I'm doing my best to give a steady one. And essentially on this map, with redlining, right, you'll have the green areas. I think there's blue areas that are the green areas are the best place to invest your money in. The Blue areas are like, they're pretty good. They're good. Yellow ones are like, I'd be a little cautious. And the red ones are like, don't do it. Right? And coincidentally, those red areas are typically full of undesirables. Black folks, Italian people, you know, any other minorities. And the reason why is because this way we can keep them, the undesirables, away from us, the desirables, or in this case, typically white people. Let's keep it 100. And again, if you don't believe me, you have the internet. If you're watching this video, Google it. Cross-reference a few different references. Don't just look at one. Google it. So, but back to what I was talking about. So, is that like I used redlining as a example there for my sentence, but I kind of went off the rails to explain it in case you didn't know what it was. But so yeah, like, why are you scared? Like, what are you scared of? Like, I'm a black man, and I mean you no harm. I'm just going to work and coming home, playing some PS3, talking with my lady, just going about my life, trying to build my life. I have, oh, this is gonna sound crazy. I have black friends. I have black friends, and we're, that obviously I'm not prejudiced. I have black friends. No, but seriously, like, I have black friends, and none of them are violent people that just hate white people or nothing like that. Some of them may be more temperamental than others for, again, reasons that I just described, like living in these terrible conditions. Like, I don't think Americans truly understand how much poverty affects you. Like, I really don't think you guys fully get the picture of, like, food instability, like instability on where you're living, right? Like, those things are very terrible. There were days in my childhood where, like, we didn't have very much to eat, you know what I mean? Or, like, I was scared that we'd be kicked out. Like, I'd come home from school with red letters on my apartment door. And my mom was raising 3 kids by herself. I'm not going to go too deep into that for personal reasons, but, I mean, like, just imagine being a fucking teenager coming home from school and seeing a red notice on your door. And my mom always said the best she could, and for what it's worth, I think she did a pretty decent job in most of the parental regards in that essence. But again, I don't want to go too deep into that, at least in this video. But I mean, like, it's crazy. There were times, obviously, where, you sleep for dinner, or like the infamous spaghetti in a pot, which I hate. I haven't eaten spaghetti in so long simply because of how much I've eaten it as a child. And, I want to try spaghetti again, but, like, if you saw that pot of spaghetti, you knew that was food for, like, the next 2-3 days. And, like, just the things I'm telling you, like, food stamps, a very I don't want to say embarrassing, but, like, it is kind of embarrassing in a sense. Like, food stamps, how little money, which, by the way, any idiot that sits here and tries to be like, oh, well, what about mothers and fathers wasting food stamps, and blah, 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 blah. Buddy, I would much rather my taxes go to anyone that needs them in this country than, sending warheads to fucking Bangladesh or wherever in the hell else. Like, it's very easy for people that are not in those positions to sit here and criticize people that are in those positions. And I really just want anyone who's watching this video to please really think about your ideas on poverty, because it affects much deeper. And I can go into a much deeper rant about it, but at another time, because we're already 40 minutes deep, and I'm really ready to wrap this video. But it's a shame. It's a shame for God. Like, I don't really think America quite understands what they're doing here. Essentially is what I want to get to. Like, you guys are sitting here supporting this Führer-in-Chief wannabe over your own countrymen, and you want to take out the other side of the political spectrum merely because they disagree with the very tyrannical wannabe dictator-in-chief, and because you're too brainwashed and foolish to even question the beliefs that you're standing by. It's gotten to a point, what is the radical left? Have you even asked yourself that? Oh, it's it's those folks that support Obama or whatever, I guess. Like, you don't even know. So it's crazy, man. Like, we really live in a world where if the hate is loud enough, it'll drown out any sort of logic or any semblance of reasoning. Let's see what time it is. Okay. And, you know, like I said, I just really wanted to make this video and have this talk with all of my Americans out there, because I genuinely really think that I'm not going to sit here and use words like saved or re-educated, because that sounds really weird. But again, I just want to, at the very least, have you question your beliefs and have you ask yourself, what are you afraid of? What am I scared of? Do I really support this thing? Why am I supporting this thing? No matter where you lean. And realize that maybe, just maybe, you don't actually agree with what you're doing. And, you know, I overall just wanted to also just speak my piece on the whole thing. It's very fucked up what's happening in America right now, and I think it's very disgusting. And I also genuinely think that we as a country need to do better. Reconstruction was never able to happen because, you know, Abraham Lincoln was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth, which I think John Wilkes Booth has done more damage to this country single-handedly than any other man in this. I'm not gonna say any other, but like than most other men in this country, men or women in this country. If Reconstruction was able to happen, because remember, Abraham Lincoln originally didn't even want, you know, slavery. He wanted it to go away, but like, he didn't really want to deal with it directly. But then the war kind of evolved into like this fight for emancipation after Frederick Douglass kind of pressured him on it, and on top of that, after Europe was looking like they were going to join in on the side of the Confederates and all that stuff. But I mean, Abraham Lincoln literally was talking about giving black people voting rights, and that was like the final straw for John Wilkes Booth right there. So again, and all that, he assassinated a man he didn't really know because of the beliefs he had. Sound familiar? Because of the beliefs he had that he didn't understand or agree with. That's why, again, like the whole Charlie Kirk thing, just to cross-reference, like, I don't agree with him, but I'm not going to sit here and say, like, oh yeah, he deserved to die. Like, I'm not going to hide my feelings. Like, I wasn't shedding tears after his death, but again, like, I'm not going to say he deserved to die. But yeah, like, it's just insane. Like, literally, what would Abraham Lincoln say? Like, just moving on, what would Abraham Lincoln say if he saw the Republican Party today? He would be fucking disgusted. I'm telling you, I didn't meet the man, obviously, you know, but I would bet he'd be pretty disgusted to see his party is full of a bunch of incompetent morons who are trying to hide a, I'm trying to look for a word I can use here that will not get me, like, shadow banned or like the montage, whatever. A very crude big boys club, I guess you could say. We'll say a very crude, nasty big boys club that involves taking advantage of very young people. There we go. He'd be disgusted. And I feel like anyone with a shred of humanity should be disgusted at that. Overall, like I said, it's about time for me to end this video because we're going on 45 minutes, and I've done my best to kind of stay on topic here, but I didn't want to do a script or anything because I really just wanted to let the feelings and thoughts and stuff flow and all that stuff, and just kind of have like an honest one-on-one-esque conversation, if you catch my drift. I really want to just have a kind of like a one-on-one-ish conversation where we're just discussing things and like all that. You know, I wanted to be as authentic as possible, you know what I mean? Because again, like, it's an opinion, a black opinion, see? No, but seriously, like, I just felt like this was the best way to shoot it. So if I was a little sporadic, I do apologize, because like I said, again, I am still pretty new to this, and I really didn't want to edit it. So But yeah, all in all, if you take away nothing else from this video, at the very least, please, I ask anyone, no matter where you lean on the spectrum, to just please start asking more questions, right? Do I agree with what's happening? Do I like it? Why am I supporting this? Blank, 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 blank. And remember, just because it doesn't affect you, doesn't mean it won't affect you in the future. Remember, my friends, my fellow working class Americans, when wisdom is shared, it becomes common knowledge. That's what I say anyway. But with all that being said, I do wish every single one of my Americans out there, no matter where you lean on the political spectrum, no matter what your job is, I wish you the best, and I truly hope that no matter where you lean mentally, politically, physically, I hope the best for all of us. And I know that we are definitely making a lot of progress. People that say protests don't matter and all that stuff are most likely scared or just very ignorant. Jimmy Kimmel got back on air a few days after, the Fuhrer-in-Chief ordered ABC, or pressured ABC and them, Disney and them, to kick him off. Don't let the news fucking deceive you with that. He was definitely involved in that. And Kimmel getting, kicked off. And we got him back. We made Disney lose $4 billion in, from what I'm hearing, stock market value, but still, $4 billion is nothing to scoff at, and obviously worked. If it wasn't for the people speaking up in the American Revolution against the British, we would never have won that. If it wasn't for folks like Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Malcolm X speaking up, we wouldn't have things like the basic civil, and like, of course, it wasn't just them. There were tons of other people, black, white, etc. Mainly black, obviously, but just kind of trying to speed this up along here. But if it wasn't for those folks and all the folks that have been fighting for our freedoms, like the freedoms we take advantage for today, and I'm not talking like freedoms, I'm talking like actual freedoms. I'm not saying the Second Amendment ain't a freedom, but I was more making a joke about the soldiers, forced to do things they don't want to do for freedom. I just want to make that clear. We take a lot of things for granted, and I think we Americans really need to. This is a great time to get in touch with history and really start understanding a lot of things about ourselves. And again, I think the best place to start is the American Revolution. Just go in order. Start from the American Revolution. And if you look up a nice video on YouTube, oversimplified, it's a great way to get started. And then as you keep going down and down, you'll have more questions like, oh, okay, well, why? I'm trying to think of one that actually kind of makes sense given the example I just gave. Like, for example, you watch the Cold War, right? Why were we so scared of the communists? Why were the communists so scared of us? Why, despite the fact that we didn't really want to go to war with each other, we were doing it anyway through proxy wars across the world? Why did JFK have to, what happened to JFK? Why was he assassinated? Does that tie into anything, etc., etc., etc.? Once you start learning the big things, you'll start to develop little mini questions that will develop into more and more, and then you'll start to get a bigger picture. Remember, I think at the very least, you should always want to get a fuller picture, no matter what. You should always want at least the facts of what happened, and then make your opinion. And I think this is a very good time for us to start remembering a lot of those values or a lot of those things I just mentioned, excuse me. And the very last thing I want to say before I sign off, since I'm at 48 minutes, is to anyone out there, and I mean this is probably the second most important thing I want to take leave before I actually finally leave, is to anyone out there that says, oh, I don't care about politics, I don't talk about politics, blah, 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 blah. We all know someone like that. You can send this video to them if you want. I'm kind of throwing shade at a few of my boys here too, if I'm being honest. But to anyone that says, oh, I don't care, blank, 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 I have two questions for you. Number one, do you care about what's happening in your country? And I'm sure your knee-jerk reaction is, of course I do. Then you care about politics, buddy. There's no ifs, ands, or buts, and then you're gonna be like, oh no, but I just care about, but. Yep. If you care about what happens in your country, you care about the politics that surround it and the discussion. If you don't care about politics, that's basically akin to saying, I don't give a fuck about what happens in this country. And you're not going to convince me otherwise on that. Point blank. There's really nothing else to say about that. So that I say, you better start caring, buddy. How do you think? Oh, excuse me. That was the second question. I really forgot it for a second. But my second question is, what do you think would happen if Martin Luther King didn't care about politics? And again, I use the very famous names here, but if MLK was just like, yeah, black people not being able to be shit in America, who cares? It's not I don't care. I'm sure someone else will figure it out. What do you think would happen if Abraham Lincoln didn't care about politics when he was in office? And he's like, yeah, the South going crazy. Do you see what I'm getting at? If we had this idea of, I don't care about politics, or I don't care about things until it affects me, blah, 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 blah. That's why it takes so long for things to get done, buddy. You should care. Alright, I'm not saying you need to know every single little detail, but you should definitely care. Now is the worst time to be uneducated about what is happening around us. Especially if you're a minority. If you're black, if you're a woman, if you're, a part of the LGBTQ plus community, you should definitely give a fuck about what's happening. I say especially because those groups in specific, like if you're a minority in any sense of the word, you quite literally cannot afford to not give a fuck about what's happening. And that's not just for this time period, but for everything. You got ICE literally running in and just arresting Latino, Mexican people because of their skin tone. And that's going to be in the history books. Like, we're not going to let you guys forget that. Like, they're not criminals, most of them. You know what I mean? They have, we've already seen the studies about it. Literally, they have, a parking ticket, a drinking and driving invitation. Come on, bro. And then, there's another knee-jerk reaction. Oh, but, they're here illegally. Listen, white man, you're here illegally. Your ancestors stole this land that we're sitting on, that I'm recording on, from the Native Americans. Y'all stole that shit. And they still haven't really gotten anything really good for it. And that's not even we haven't even gotten to the Trail of Tears. I remember how the Native Americans, how their tribes were kind of split apart and all that. That's a much deeper topic. But yeah, I just, all in all, again, I just don't want to keep spiraling because I know I'm going to keep going. Like I said, I just want to do a quick recap. Number one, always question authority and your beliefs. I'm not saying you always have to change your mind, but you should always question it. Number two, you should definitely give a fuck about the things that are happening to you and your other countrymen and people around the world. You don't need to know everything, but you definitely should care. And number three, just don't be a piece of shit to other human beings, man. It's not that hard. Just because you don't understand them, if you don't like them, doesn't mean you get a free pass to be a prejudiced bastard. At the end of the day, America, all we're really, at the end of the day, America, all we're really gonna have is ourselves. So, I think we need to start realizing that and start taking care of ourselves and our fellow countrymen. Because when things get heavy, who is it that goes to war? It's not the politicians. It's not the rich. It's us. Anyways, now that my little one-on-one rambling is over, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions about anything, I'll always do my best to answer them. Whatever, like I said, I always like reading comments and whatnot. So, yeah. This is the Black Opinion signing off. I wish all of you guys a good day. I hope that this video inspired you to maybe speak up about something or look into something or question something. I just hope it inspired you to do something. That's all I can really ask for. Or maybe it was just comforting to hear or entertaining to listen to. Regardless, this is Black Opinion, and I'm signing off for the day. Now take care of yourselves out there.